Hey guys, we are here with two of our team members at Verus Financial, Jimmy Vongsaly and Brett Cristiano. Topic today is pretty interesting. A little bit of a different spin, but let's talk about how culture and history and kind of childhood kind of affects money, and then how has being in financial services and just being educated from a college perspective changed kind of your viewpoint on money.
Yeah. Starting off, it's just my parents are immigrants from Laos, so money's a little different from first generation, right?
Yeah.
We weren't wealthy by any means. I think we're probably on the poorer side. Growing up, we stayed in a multi generational house. We had aunts, uncles that lived there, and then myself and my parents and my grandparents lived there. We shared one roof for a long time. So, one thing I learned about money in general is they were entrepreneurs.
Right.
They wanted to try anything and everything. My parents started off with a video store. So when Blockbuster was big, right?
Yeah.
We had the Asian version of Blockbuster going
Yeah.
on.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
It was mainly like Thai videos and Cambodian videos that we had that we were renting out to customers, and they had me working. I was
Yeah.
probably 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah. 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 Very sure.
And then they ventured from that into a restaurant business
Right.
out in Spring Branch.
Okay.
Before what it is today,
Right.
it's completely different. They had a Thai restaurant. It was buffet, and then it ventured to a Thai restaurant, and then became a nightclub a couple years later.
Yeah.
So they wanted to try that out as well. And then a few years later after that, they wanted to do another nightclub in the veterans line where you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they tried a lot of things. And then eventually they settled into farming, which was much more labor intensive
Right.
for myself as well and them. So we got to learn about that. So a lot of lessons to be learned as a child, going through helping my parents about the bills. And I was running the video stores at one point in time. I was probably 12 or 13 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
They entrusted me with their business. I was running it while they were running their second business.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Interesting
What was
times.
your favorite business out of all those to be involved in as a capacity?
Favorite business? Eesh. It's probably the video store because that's where I got to learn the most. I had to run everything. I had to get change, make sure we're producing the videos on time, making sure that I'm checking customers in and out. So I had the most hands-on experience there. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with that. Yeah. So when you think about the the genesis of what people who are children of immigrants believe in money and investments and savings, what was your belief system growing up? How has that changed as an adult? And then obviously, when we went through college, because you and I went to college together, right?
Yeah.
How did that change?
I mean, you don't blow your money for sure. You gotta learn how to save a little bit. I think at one point in time you realize, oh, you finally have some money to spend. Let's play a little bit. But then at the end of the day, you can only spend so much. Eventually, you gotta come back to saving. That kind of step into a circle where I gotta add that as a part of my life now. So I think it's really been a lesson that I've carried on through my adulthood.
Yeah, yeah. And so when you think about their version of investments, right? So you think immigrants to the US, whether from Algeria or from, Zimbabwe to, Vietnam, right? What do you think the average immigrant's view of investments and savings is?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you think that's shaped how you are?
I probably got the first dose of investing when it came to money pooling. I don't know, yeah, Vietnamese folks have something like that, but where you have a set group of people that they contribute money monthly, and then the first person that wants to borrow the pool of money would pay interest to those fellow members, and it went on for about a year or two, depending on the number of participants.
Right,
So I participated.
right.
I was probably 17 years old at the time. And my mom's like, hey, she recommended it. So my allowance wasn't just getting blown left and right. It was actually getting invested. So, and then I got to see a return. It's like, oh, okay, I got, some decent change out of this. So that was a good eye opener in terms of like what money can do for you, how it can work for you. And it kind of stuck.
Yeah. So I think a distrust in the U.S. banking system or banking systems in general, right? So if you come from not the U.S., right, there's general distrust in the banking system,
Yeah.
right? When you think about it from immigrants, right, because they come from a place where maybe the banks control the money or the
Yeah.
government can take the money whenever they want or seize property or assets, right? So it's a different world, right, when they come to the U.S., right? So now that you're on the other side of the investment management and sharing with people this is the things you should do. What hurdles do you see when you have to talk to folks that are, we'll call it, first generation here?
Yeah. Hurdles. Let's see. I mean, I think history is a big one. People have been doing this a lot longer than what a money pool is. A money pool is about 1 to 3 years tops, but the market's been around a much longer period of time. So that's some of the eye-opening experiences that we have to share with immigrants. Like, hey, I know you this is your experience, but what about the stock market and where it's been and how where it's going, right? Those are some of the lessons that I'm trying to share with our clients and
Yeah.
first gen, second gen, or even the older folks.
Yeah. So let's shift gears to just kind of when you think about investments and Brett, questions you have, you can ask questions. What do you got there?
Yeah. So I guess Jimmy, based on your just on your experiences, talk to us about when you basically were loaning money to family and friends that are in that pool. How did they describe like the risk to you as far as potentially losing some money or maybe some scenarios you dealt with to kind of give us an idea of what that was like?
It's based on trust. That's number one, right? So
Mhm.
you only invite people that you trust, and that's hard because even sometimes friends and family will walk out on you.
It's credit quality,
Yeah.
right? It's credit
Yeah.
quality, right?
So it's more purely reputation opposed to like a credit score or a
Absolutely.
track record.
Yeah.
Right. There's nothing on paper. It's
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
this has been my experience with
nothing
Jimmy,
real.
and you get introduced or recommended to the group.
Yep, exactly.
How big do these groups or pools get as far as how many people
It
are
can be up to
participating?
like 30 participants. And
Okay.
sometimes it's mom, son, sister, that type of deal. It adds up pretty quick, but not everybody's gonna be family. There are gonna be cousins and stuff that are participating as well.
Okay.
Like people in the community are generally in there. I mean, I've seen 30 as the most, and
Okay.
I think that's about 3 years or so of play.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So as you guys are making that transition into now talking to customers and clients, right? What do you think is the biggest hurdle to overcome when you deal with folks again, first generation?
That the stock market can work for you. That's for sure. It's like they don't. It's hard for them. It's hard to describe to them what it can do, but we have graphs, we have numbers in our systems that can show you that, right?
Yeah.
And it takes time, of course. The fluctuations are there, but it's a long game. It's not a short game.
Yeah.
What they may be used to, because the pools are generally 2 to 3 years, whereas they're not used to the rule of 72 working for you.
Yeah.
Like we kind of get educated on, and that's the kind of the hurdle that you got to kind of educate them on.
So super interesting in terms of both of you guys, right? So Brett's experience as a 12 or 13-year-old with finances or 15-year-old with finances, right? So Brett, what is your experience, right? You're a second or third gen?
Well, my great grandparents came over from Italy.
All right, so you would be second or third gen.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, third gen.
So it's interesting because my grandfather was a World War II POW. When he got back from the war, he just collected pension from the VA and then eventually Social Security and kind of worked odd jobs over the years. He always had the mindset of I'm not smart enough to go to college, so he never did, and he passed that scholarship on to my father. But my father, I would say he didn't get started investing as early as he would have liked to. Back 40, 50 years ago, right, wasn't that easy to get access to buying.
For sure.
Index funds.
Access
or
is totally
ETFs
different.
weren't a thing.
Stocks, you
Right.
buy round lots.
So you would, and 401ks, took a while to come around there too. So when that became available through his job, we obviously started participating in it. I think everybody wishes they would have done more. But that's for the most part, right? Most of his funds are qualified funds, just like a lot of people, right? In that big boomer generation, all your wealth is in your house and your 401k, right?
Right.
There's not a lot of non-qualified money and not as many from an entrepreneurial standpoint.
Yeah,
Watch out.
it's an interesting dichotomy that we're in, right? So you look at both of you guys and go, okay, well, you learned it from your dad, but he learned it probably through school and through just kind of his first job, probably, right? That's when you really learn it, right? And my experience is kind of closer to Jimmy's, right? You know, your first job, and the boss is like, you put money in the IRA and a 401k. Like, dude, I'm making nickels. What do you mean? You wouldn't. But that first house was bought with IRA money that I pulled out for a first time home buyer. So I totally understand that idea, right? When you guys think about this next generation, right, we're actually kind of reverting back to what we'll call it first generation people want to do now, right? There was a heavy trust in the stock market in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, right? And now people are going back to that immigrant, that first generation, like, hey, let's buy real estate, let's do this, let's do that, because, that's the only way they, being people who are not, from the US, know how to build wealth, right? There's no other way, right, for them, right? It's buy real estate, get rental income, and that's kind of the idea, right? So when you see that kind of shift back towards that distrust in the market, how do you guys combat that today?
Well, you got to build up to it. You won't have 200, 300,000 to kind of put down right away. So, use the market to your advantage and let it help you build up to that.
I think you're thinking about like right now, today, with the current interest rate environment, right? Real estate looks a little bit less attractive right now. So people are looking at alternatives like, should I invest in stocks or businesses? So I think that's advantageous as far as, people diversifying a little bit more. But they're still a little skittish because I think a lot of people, if not younger individuals that hear from their parents or people that went through it, the 2008 type scenario, right? With the stock market basically cut in half.
Yeah, when you go to 2008 and then you backdoor with a decade and a half of good fortune, or a decade a decade or so of good fortune, and then you go, okay, well, COVID dropped 40%. Nobody saw that come in. And then you then double that with a negative 2022 and negative 18%, right? I think even today's generation is a little skittish, right? If you look at the 28 and 30-year-olds and they go, man, my parents lost half of their money during COVID. And then all of a sudden, they decided to jump back in right when the market was high, and then they lost it again because they really didn't. And nobody goes, oh, well, let me sell in mid-March, right? And then let me hop back in right away, right? Because they missed the boat, right? And then just for 22 to come back and wipe it back down, right? So you've got a lot of folks out there that are in their maybe mid to early 20s that are hearing stories from their 50 and 60-year-old parents, actually. They're going, during COVID, we lost X amount. We can't really trust the market, right? Just like when we felt that probably from our parents, right? Or you probably, because my parents had 401k. Your dad, right? Your dad told you about 08, right?
Oh, I remember sitting in the car with one of my dad's friends, a neighbor of ours, and him looking at me after it. I was like only a year or two later, and things were starting to recover, and it was just like, man, I haven't made any money in the last couple of years. I don't know when I'm going to retire. This is nuts. And it's just, at the end of the day, sometimes people forget to zoom out, right? As far as that long term.
They forgot the money they made in the 80s and 90s. For sure. So I get that. All right, cool. So, when you look at those folks that are kind of skittish today, right? And you go, okay, well, they're concerned about the market, they're concerned about 2022, interest rates, Iran, Russia, right? So many variables out there in the world, right? What is your approach to educating folks on that? And how do you lean on your past experiences, whether with your parents or just growing up, Jimmy, on helping people with that?
For myself, I think building your skill set is probably the most key thing. Is what are you investing for yourself? Market can go up and down, but what are you adding to your knowledge base, your education, and your personal skill set to survival, and adding jobs to your, at least skills that help you acquire those jobs. Those are things that can't die. They can't take that away from you. So those are things I'd recommend outside, of course, investing in the market.
Yeah, I think investing in the market, first off, it's a case of like, look, we do need some short-term money that's not the market. Right. Yes, I would agree with that. Either use it in a money market or some money in a savings account or whatever vehicle you decide to use. But if we've got money we're not going to touch for at least a few years here, it's an absolute no-brainer to consider that being a part of your adding stocks to part of your portfolio.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people don't take that time to build those different buckets, or maybe they haven't even built the first bucket.
Yeah.
And so they're a little worried about if I put some money in and I'm going to need it back in a few months. Well, okay, that shouldn't be in the stock market again. But
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's cool. When I think about educating people who are new to finances, I always share with them it's actually rather simple, right? When you think about, just think about what you make, whatever number that is, right? Whether it's 100 grand a year, you make $50 an hour, right? In theory, that's how it works, right?
Mhm.
So every $50 essentially needs to be replaced, right? When you think about retirement, it's really a simple game, right? Okay, there's 2,000 hours I work a year. I need to replace every single one of those dollars or something that can generate that same income, right? So when you think about, okay, I need $50, right? So at a 5% interest rate, how much money do I need to save for $50?
yeah, 5%.
Yeah, $1,000.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's $1,000, right?
Hmm.
Then you go, if I need 2,000 of those $1,000, what is that? $2 million, right? And I tell people all the time, I mean, nowadays with AI, you don't even have to have understanding of IRR and calculations and all that stuff in finance. Just type it in and go, okay, to back into, me getting to $2 million, how much do I need to save today, starting at 0 or 50 grand, 100 grand, and it just kind of spits out a number, right?
Mhm.
I did this exercise with somebody yesterday, and they were like, "Really? That's all I need to do? Save like, and this person's example is different, but it was like $600 a month. Like that's it." I was like, "No, that's doable, right?" And once you break it down to that micro goal, right, and you help them understand that first $600 you save a month is replacing that income for you, or that first $1,000, right? Once they start to kind of see it mathematically that way, you go, oh, that's more approachable, right? Because now I just need to save 2,000 of those little buckets, right? So I try to make it super simple for people when they think about their goals because they don't even know where to start. Right. I think the second place I explain to people is interest rates, right? So nobody really knows, right? Unless you are over 50, you have no understanding of what interest rates used to actually look like at the bank, right? Meaning when you used to be at the bank, you could go to the bank, they charge you $10 or $15 for your account to stay open. And then whatever the Fed fund rate was, let's say it's 4%, they gave you 4% in your checking or savings account, right? Your savings and loans, right? Well, somewhere around 2010, right? We as a public hopped on the no fee train, right? So interest rates were really low. It was a quarter point. Chase said, hey, I guess we got to fall in line. We're not going to charge anybody $10 anymore. So we're going to give you 1 cent of that quarter point, right? We're going to keep 24 cents, right? Now, that's okay if you go through 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, all the way up to 2020, right? When interest rates went up, us as a general public don't know any better. So now they're still giving us the 1 penny.
Mhm.
And they're making 375 today, and they're keeping 374 of the 375, right? Unfortunately, right? So as people start to think about savings, I tell people it's a new game, right? Essentially 1 month worth of bills in your checking, 2 months worth of bills in money market, and then 3 months worth of bills in T-bills, bonds, right? Because the market is so accessible, right? If you think even 10, 15 years ago, it was just not as accessible for people, right? You couldn't just click a button and move money from your bond account directly into your checking account next day, right? Today, you can do that, right? In any platform, Schwab, Fidelity, Vanguard, whoever, right? So I think the rules of 6 months worth of savings has changed a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's how I used to educate newer folks to the market. What else was there? Talk to us about your experience as being a first-time financial advisor. So you were obviously year 1. You were obviously year 13?
Yeah.
13? Yeah. Yeah. So talk to us about that experience of where you're at now and where it's going.
I think with any new role that you take on, is you're learning the ropes. You gotta be a sponge at the same time. You're trying to make things go. You're learning on the fly. You're learning every day, and while it's a challenge, it's fun at the same time. There is some repetition that you see every now and then, but for the most part, it's a new situation almost every day. I asked a lot of questions. So.
Actually, you don't ask that many questions, to be honest with you. Maybe ask Anthony.
I asked Anthony, I asked Kyle. So
yeah.
we have a lot of resources that are disposal, and I'm grateful for that. So definitely challenging. A lot of learning, a lot of licensing and failures involved as well. So a lot of learning, and I'm looking forward to the journey. I think that's what I'm in for, the journey and the growth of it all.
Yeah, I think I can relate. I remember what it was like being in Jimmy's shoes there. You're drinking from a fire hose and there's no brakes, right? It just keeps coming. But, you act like a student all the time. And I think that's the right approach. You talk to guys that have been doing this for 30, 40 years. They say, look, man, never stop learning, never stop getting designations, never stop going to conferences, because there's a lot to learn, and you need to have that right mindset that I don't know everything. And there's times you learn something new from a client, whether it be an opportunity or just a different perspective on things.
Yeah. And, I would say this is year 20, going on 21 for me, right? So when you think about that student of the game, it is absolutely critical, right? So you think, man, you've been doing this 20 years, you just stop learning, right? But there's so many new things, right? And if you're not adapting to technology, you're not adapting to the new products and services out there, right? People have been able to now synthesize some of the things that the uber wealthy have been using for a long time down to just the everyday person, right? The everyday person isn't going to listen to this, right? And they haven't gotten there, whether it's alternative investments, private equity, options, something as basic as buffer strategies, right? And, a lot of folks in the general public don't really know that if you think about a new product, once it launches, and it's launched out in the world. Every corporation, most of the folks who are listening work for corporations. There's a huge due diligence process at a large corporation. Why? Because there's lots of risk involved, right? From their perspective, right? Because they have, we'll pick on any firm. Let's say they have 20,000 financial advisors, right? They're 20,000 financial advisors. That group of people could be 21-year-old kids fresh out of college. They could be 30-year veterans, right? They have to build their rules and regulations around the lowest common denominator, right? So a lot of due diligence. So the folks that work with some of those firms, they may not be getting access to that information because they can't share it with you yet, right? It hasn't been approved by the corporation. They can't send it out to you as an employee, as a new client or a current client. So I always tell clients, it's nice to look around and shop around. We have the pleasure, or the unfortunate pleasure some days, of being a small boutique firm, right? So we get the information firsthand. Our compliance department is very small, right? We have one compliance manager, compliance consultant, and myself. And that's pretty much it. And all three of us sign off, we're good. We're going to move forward with the product or service, right? So we've been able to bring things to market faster than other people have. So I always tell people, think about being a student of the game, you're always learning new ways to do things, different ways to do things, new tools, always trying to grow, reevaluate your vendors, right? If you're not taking the risk, then you really don't know how that works, right? I think as you're moving forward in this next phase of the career, right? Where do you guys see the opportunities to help people, and where do you see people really either have their blinders on or really just don't know?
I'm looking forward to the multi-generational aspect of the business. So building with their grandparents and then their kids, but also their grandkids.
Right.
Setting them up for success in the long term, multi-generational phase, having those conversations and getting to know them as the years go on, getting introduced to the younger folks as they come along. That's all I'm looking for.
Cool. Oh, you bet.
I think one of the biggest things people are missing is a lot of times, in part due to like what your investment options are in your 401k, that your only options are investing in stocks, bonds, and cash, and maybe real estate if you got the money for it, right? I think one of the things, jumping ship to the RIA world here, being independent, realizing there's a whole new world of opportunity out there, as far as creative investment and even low risk investments for clients, either to generate income or to invest in asset classes that have no correlation to stocks or bonds.
Right.
And I think that's something that a lot of people need to take some time and explore, either through an advisor or on their own there, because it's pretty interesting to see what actually exists out there, whether it be access to private markets, right? Private equity, for example. I think that's those type of things people need to consider, or at least need to learn more about.
So one word of caution, I will object a little bit of
Okay.
not looking for it on your own.
Yeah.
For two reasons, right? If I'm old now at this point in my career, right? But I was actually around when Madoff happened. I was around when Bernie Madoff happened, and I actually remember us working at Mass Mutual, and somehow a Bernie Madoff fund got through the Mass Mutual compliance. And then maybe a couple years later, I got an email or a call from compliance saying, "Hey, have you ever recommended these funds?" And I was like, "I have not." "And have you ever sold any of these funds?" I was like, "I also have not." So I always tell clients that even if it's sometimes someone professional, right? There's always something that's gonna slip through the cracks, but it's probably better than you doing it on your own, right? And to be frank, the world of alternative investments is the wild, wild west, right? Digital currency, also the wild, wild west, right? There's so many new frontiers of investing in new products and new ways to build investments that it's so much easier to get scammed, to get burned. If you're gonna go into that new realm, right? So if you said, "Hey, man, what can I DIY?" DIY stocks, ETFs, bond funds. If you really, that's your game, go ahead and do it. No problem. But if you go, "Hey, I'm gonna start doing alternatives," I probably would not DIY that, guys. That's one of those that you go, "Man, let me find somebody to help me with that situation," right?
It's good recommendation.
So, all right, cool, awesome. Other than that, anything else you guys want to add to the conversation about generation investing, first generation, and different things about the stock market?
Maybe just talking about like starting a business versus buying a business. So like, in your opinion, would you always buy a business that's already established and enforced and up and running smoothly, or would you rather start your own business from a blank slate and make it your own, if you will?
Yeah, I think that boils down to two things, right? So actually, I was talking to somebody about the same person yesterday. They were conflicted on if they should start a business or not. But when you start a business, you have to know that you start a business with a divorce in mind. And they go, "What do you mean?" So when you start a business, you got to either know that at the end you're going to sell to the inside, sell to the outside, or pass it to the next generation, right? There's only three ways to exit, right? You're not going to take it to the grave, right? So number one, know what your reason for buying this investment or building this business is, right? If you don't have a reason for building a business other than I like to work for myself, right? Because then you just get trapped, right? The entrepreneurial trap with entrepreneurial myth is simple, right? You start going, "Hey, I'm good at making widgets, tired of working for somebody else and making widgets." And then I start making my own widgets. Then all of a sudden I realize I gotta make widgets on Saturdays, on Sundays. I can't take vacation. I can't take a day off to go see my kid's soccer game. And then I get trapped in the widget making business, right? And I'm unhappy in the widget making business.
Right.
And then once I'm unhappy with the widget making business, the quality of the widgets go down. And then my business goes, right? Because there's no systems and processes in place, right? So first thing is you understand what your risk is, right? Number one, do you have capital? If you have no capital, then you have no choice to start your own, right?
Yep.
For example, as a 21-year-old financial advisor, while you're under the banner of Mass Mutual, you're essentially a solopreneur, right? And you got no capital, but they've got support, they've got services, they've got training and education, and it was a great place for us to learn. So I don't take back any of my time there, but I started a business there with no capital, right? And then Verus Financial, 14 years later, I was blessed to be a little bit more of a capital this place, so I had some money to spend, right? But still, buying your own business comes with the fact that you have to service the debt, right? So can you make the number? These are cash flowing based on the debt service, right? So I always tell people, it depends on what you're looking for. And then what your skill set is, right? If you don't have the skill sets that you think to build a business, probably better you buy somebody else's business, right? But if you're a good, think of it like this. If you watch sports or football or anything like that, there's game managers buying business. As long as you're a good game manager, you're good.
Yeah.
Right? If you're a good gunslinger, you can probably figure it out, right? I would probably put myself in being a better gunslinger than in being a good game manager, right? But, I got Anthony. Anthony's my game manager, right? So we're a little bit of both, right? So anyways, that's the way I look at it. Anyways.
That makes sense. And I think too, when you're buying a business, a lot of times whoever you're buying from can have unrealistic expectations as far as what that business is worth because they put their blood, sweat, and tears into it.
Right.
And a lot of times too, if you are selling a business, you're kind of torn between What's private equity offer me to get bought out versus my friend down the street that I've known for 20 years, even though I've competed with, we have a good relationship, and I would trust them to take over my business.
Right.
They're probably not going to pay as much as that big private corporation.
Right. So, I think it depends on what you're looking at to accomplish, right? So, do you want complete control or do you want not the debt service, right? Look, even as a financial advisor, your goal is maybe to buy a book of business, right? But I'm beholden to that debt service at that point, right? Man, sometimes I go back and forth, right? I'm sure people offer me to buy a book of business and I go, I don't know if I want the debt service. I go take a loan. Right? I don't want to be strapped to that debt service, but that's my personal financial philosophy. I'm a very free, no strings attachment type person, right? Some people are okay with that, right? I am personally just not, right? So if you ask me, if someone said, hey, let's buy a book of business, it had to be a really good book of business for me to go, yeah, I'm in it. So that's just my personal preference.
Well, that makes sense. You buy a business, even with proper due diligence, there's always some skeletons or something you didn't know was an issue. Or
right. So for my peace of mind, I generally prefer not to buy a book of business. But if you said, hey, would you sell this and then start all over with a non-compete, no clients? Oof, I'm too old and too tired to do that.
That's right. So step outside of that world for a second. Let's say either you couldn't or didn't want to do financial services anymore. In what industry would you start a business or buy a business ideally?
Oh my God. Me personally?
Mm-hmm.
No other business than financial services. Look, and you guys who know me, I own a gym on the side. I would say that is not the best financial business, right? It's a fun business. It's fun. It's super fun. And it's not a good financial business. Growing up, my parents did restaurants. Again, fun, right? But lots of work.
Lots of work.
8 days a week, right?
Yeah, 8 days a week.
Long
8 days a week. Man, it'd be hard pressed for me to find a business that I really would be interested in. Maybe a consulting business.
Okay.
If you had to pick it, a coaching consulting business would probably be the next thing if I had to do it.
Okay.
Probably right up my alley.
What would you coach? Who would you coach, or who would you?
Anyone, anything, anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever it is, right? Whether it's divorcees, business owners, entrepreneurs, people in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like, I would probably think that that's probably a good, easy segue with my current skill set.
Right. A lot of stuff.
Yeah. Other than that, coaching, consulting, no, everything else is not worth it. In my opinion, that's just me.
Fair.
I mean, I guess IT service. If you had to pick another one.
Service, okay.
Third one would be IT service, some type of IT service, SaaS or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's probably where I would. What about you guys? If you couldn't be a financial advisor.
Well, originally my original degree in college was accounting. And even though, not quite as interesting and exciting as finance, pretty stable business model, I would probably want to be more of the hands-off passive investor in that than being the CPA at the head front, though. So but that might be one I would consider.
Yeah.
I think for myself, I have a natural love for technology, so going back into tech wasn't bad either. Tech was pretty easy to grasp when I first came out of college, and it's still pretty easy now. So.
Yeah. So
it's not as sexy, but it made sense to me.
Oh man, tech is super sexy today. In 2026,
that's true.
Tech is all the rage, right? Any NVIDIA chip you can think of, any software,
and it's always
AI
evolving.
It's always evolving.
Yeah.
So, as a Toy Story said, right? We watched Toy Story yesterday. The Attack of the Tech. Tech has invaded, right?
That was a good movie, man.
It was a good movie. So, all right, cool. Well, thank you guys for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Awesome.
Happy to be here.